Views expressed on this program are those of the host, guest, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
You're listening to Maximum Medicine Radio with host Doc Martin. Stay tuned in or call in. You won't want to miss what's happening next. How do you step into your maximum potential? How do you connect your spiritual drive with your physical path? Stick around as Doc Martin takes listeners on a journey through the seen and unseen, the accepted and the unbelievable. Get ready to meet the maximum you the world needs on Maximum Medicine Radio with Doc Martin now. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here tonight. It's 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and I'm Doc Martin, and you're listening to Maximum Medicine Radio, part of the Transformation Talk Radio family. We're here for the next hour, and I've got a very good, wonderful guest here, whom I hope is soon going to be my friend. We've met previously. This is Dr. Jaap van Etten. And I'm so happy to have him here. Welcome, Jaap.
Thank you, Sharon. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, everybody, I want to tell you a little bit about the Maximum Medicine show and tell you what we're going to cover today, something I think you'll find very helpful. So, my goal with the Maximum Medicine Radio was to try to pull in some of the mystical things I've experienced that really aren't so esoteric. They've actually been helpful for my path, helping to rise to any life challenges. So to that end, people that I have met that have studied some wonderful things that actually can help us as humans move forward, I like to have them on this show. So Jaap, I'm so happy you're here. Can you take a minute to just let the audience know how they can reach you?
Yeah, the most easy way to reach me is through, of course, a email address. And that email address is Jaap, which is Jaap, at lemurantis, lemurantis.com. And that's also the website, lemurantis.com. And there are two more websites that they can reach me to. And I think you give them also on your website so they can look there at the different other possibilities to reach me.
Perfect. So everyone, I first met Jaap, I'm going to say, might have been 5 years ago when I was on a spiritual journey with about 6 other women, and we took a trip to Sedona. And one of the things that we did while we were there was get Jaap to take us on a hike. And he took us on a hike of the Red Rocks and showed us the sacred sites. And Jaap, you remember we had one site where we tapped into Cassiopeia, and another site where we saw the shaman, the birthing cave, where the women went. But what really struck me, and actually what followed me home, and why I wanted you to be here today, is we sat in one site. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly where, but we were asked to tap into the dragons. And when we did that, I felt such an immense power, a surge of energy up from the depths of the earth that could have been scary because the power was so strong, but it was also very reassuring. And since that time, when I've come back, I've called the dragons to come in my healing sessions when I do energy medicine. And I've actually had my clients, even though I haven't told them that I was calling the dragons, I've had my clients afterwards. I said, by the way, the dragons were here. They said, oh, yes, I felt them. They were X, Y, and Z colors, or they came and I felt this and that. So this is so exciting to me because I feel that those are really primordial forces of the earth and critical to the earth. So could you just talk a little bit about how you came upon the dragons?
Yes.
It
Well,
might be a
actually,
story, so you take all the time you need.
okay. Well, to be honest, the beginning is actually almost contradictory to what we are saying. I didn't believe in dragons. And I was challenged actually by my wife, who said, "You always tell people that if a species or a group of species exists, there must be something like what we call a morphogenetic grid on Earth that shows that they are existing." Now, that is a belief that even science is now beginning to embrace, that morphogenetic systems are needed in order for a species to exist, whether that species is visible or invisible. And, I have been dowsing for a long, long, long time. So I decided to check out with her whether I could find any of those grids. And lo and behold, we found the grids. Well, first I was still skeptical, but the more I researched, the more I began to feel and connect with them, and the less chance I had to continue to deny their existence. So at a certain moment, they became for me as, yeah, you can say as present as any physical being. Because the more we connect with them, the more we realize that we don't need our eyes and our ears, that we have many other ways to connect with beings. And once we have made that connection, they become part of our lives. They become part of our way of looking at the world. So that is how I started with the dragons.
So just for our listeners, and this is something I always also like to have is when everybody thinks what we talk about is so woo-woo or out there, I have to remind them that we have people with strong backgrounds in traditional academic science, such as yourself. And
Mhm.
you are a PhD in biology, you are a research scientist, you taught high school biology. So, being a man of science does not exclude a person from actually tapping into the things that we once thought were so woo-woo, but now perhaps we just should say that they're the unseen that we haven't opened our awareness to yet.
Yes, we can even go back. We have to realize that the separation between what we call the visible world, which is what science is basically researching, and that what was not visible, we have separated them. And in the past, they were not separated. It was so logic to include that because people were still more sensitive and they trained their abilities to feel and sense. And they believed in those days that what you sense has a certain value. And in our current scientific time, we don't believe anymore in the feeling and the sensing of things. We do everything from the logic mind and the one and one is two. And we begin to realize that it will never give us the answers. I gave always the example of in biology where everybody will agree that life force is an inherent part of life. And we cannot measure life force. I cannot say, "Oh, Sharon, you have that amount of life force in your body." There is no instrument. Nonetheless, we don't deny that life force exists. Well, that is the beginning of accepting subtle energies that are an inherent part of our existence. That is a beginning of a basis that we can then expand and expand on. And I hope that many people, and it is increasing already, are beginning to research that. And the problem is it's not getting funded. So a lot of researchers believe in it because they know it exists. But since it's not part of funding and not part of getting funds, they will not easily talk about it.
And I keep remembering that the ancient medicine men and women had those connections. They weren't drowned out by the technology we are today,
Yes.
and they were in tune with the rhythms and the animals. And so, we're it's like we're climbing back to reach that awareness that we used to have. I think it's wonderful we have all this technology, but we did shut down a part of us
Yes.
And now you're right. I think people are waking up to it. And yes, maybe we'll start funding, or maybe we'll start researching more about it. We're going to take a quick break in just a minute, but I just want to remind listeners, you may have known Jaap's work from his work with crystal skulls, and he also has worked with the energy vortices of Sedona. And so when we come back, I want Jaap to tell us, do you have to be an experienced meditator to meet the dragons, or can a newbie do that? So that's what I really want to cover when we come back, because I'd like everybody to feel that this isn't something that's so esoteric or so specialized that they themselves can't get the benefit from the dragons. So, Kat, that's our wonderful producer. Let's take a break right now, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes. So happy to be here because I have Dr. Jaap van Etten here to talk. We're talking about the dragons. And Jaap, I really like to have some explanation of what the dragons are, and actually, so what? Like, what can they do for us, or what is their relationship to us?
Yes. To begin with, there are an increasing number of people that experience dragons. Well, some people say the reason is that there are phases where the subconscious mind of people connect with stories. So the big question is it all stories or not? Well, I mentioned earlier that there are specific grid systems on Earth that tells whether a species exists. So let's assume they do exist, and then can you then connect with them? Because if you don't see them, do you need specific skills to connect with them? And I think the most important part of connecting with anything that is not directly, you can say, visible, or that you can, in one way or another, connect with through your senses, is whether you are open for it or not. A lot of things that we don't want to believe are simply not existing for us because we don't want to believe them. There is no reverence aspect in our mind about certain things. So a lot that people choose not to believe is simply because they have no reverence and they choose not to want to believe. So they don't explore it. And the interesting thing is that every human being is a very sensitive human being. But the sensitivity needs to be translated in an understanding, and that is done through the brains. So if our brains are programmed in a certain way in not believing, we cannot believe because the brain will not allow to do that. It doesn't fit in the system. So the key point is, are you willing to be open for the possibility that certain beings exist that are not visible? Realizing that our eyes can only see a very, very small part of all the frequencies that exist. You know, a dog is already, and a cat are seeing more than we can see. So realizing that we see a very limited part of what really exists may be helpful to understand that it is possible to use other senses that we call extrasensory perception to begin to perceive or feel or sense those beings. But if you're not willing to do that, it's not going to happen. So for me, it's always the most important. In the same way, when I said in the beginning I didn't believe in them, of course I didn't come across them because they were not in my awareness as a possibility. So my brain simply rules them out. So when I start to believe in the possibility and start exploring, you know, it's like opening the doorways of perception, I call it. Mm-hmm. So that's the key point. And once you begin to be more open, then you can begin to explore. And yeah, is meditation helpful? Yes. Meditation is helpful for everything. You know, for the development of your brain, for becoming more sensitive, for aligning your physical system. All of that is true. But you don't need to do that in order to begin to be open for the possibility of their existence. I am amazed that once I came out with the book, that so many people told me, oh yeah, I see dragons. It was like as if my book was a permission slip for them to begin to talk about it. It is suddenly not anymore that people say you're nuts because you see dragons. Oh boy.
Right.
And I was surprised about the diversity of the different people that were telling me. It had nothing to do with meditation. It had to do with the fact that they somewhere picked up something, thought they were nuts, and didn't share it with others.
Right.
So share experiences is very important, like what you were sharing in the beginning about sitting at that place and suddenly feel dragons around you. Having the courage to share that is literally like opening doors. So I invite people for two things: be open, and secondly, have the courage to share your experiences, because you will learn through the feedback. And yes, if you know that somebody by definition will tell you that you're nuts, you better don't do it. So once you begin to do that, you can explore what they do. Well, I've been studying now for quite some years, and one of the enormous gift is that they are actually you can say, the guardians of the creative power. Well, we are all creators, but if you believe it or not, we create all the time, because your thought is already setting creation into motion. That's why it's good to be aware of what your thoughts are, right? But we all are creators. That means we use the creative powers, and we know those powers as the elemental powers, fire, water, air, and earth. And whether we know of their existence or not, we use them. And many ancient traditions will tell you that we use them. And actually, if you really go into many of the traditions, they tell us that we need to understand them better in order to be more conscious creators. So dragons literally help us to become a more conscious creator. Whether you see them or not, simply inviting them is helping to bring their support in so that you become a better creator.
So
You
are
don't
they?
have,
Sorry, go ahead.
You don't have to know all the different powers and understand all the powers. That is one of the misconceptions. If you are pure from your heart, and from your heart set an intent and ask beings to help you, they will help you.
So when you say the dragons assist in your creative power, are you talking because of the elemental energies they represent and they can bring into your field?
It is not so much that they have to bring us in our field, because they are in our field.
Okay.
You can say the elemental powers are literally in everything. They're
Okay.
in every aspect of creation. Yeah. But to use them in a way that the system is balanced, that's a different story. Yeah. So we have elemental powers, which are more difficult to understand, and we have the elements, the power of the elements. Then you have the physical water and the air that you feel blowing, and the earth that you can touch, right? And the fire that you can warm yourself on. Those, all of them, there are guardians that help us to work with that. The dragons help us to work with it. And the dragons are directly connected with Mother Earth, because Mother Earth literally invites us to work with the elemental powers in such a way that it benefits the earth and every living being on it. And that is you can say, the tremendous importance of what dragons can offer. We don't need to understand every aspect. We need to be willing to be open for the powers and say, okay, those beings of love and light, help me in, and then you can fill in what it is that you want. But we all want to create not only for our ego perspective, but for something that helps the world around us. And an increasing number of people are saying that they consciously want to contribute to that. Well, then you need to learn to use those powers properly, and the dragons can help us with that, being the guardians of it.
And I think specifically the dragons, but there's such a movement underfoot in today's day and age. And we were talking earlier about so much technology that to regain the true relationship with the earth and to be in sync with her and And you're right, we don't walk our human path without the earth.
No.
And hence, if we want to, and when we say create, I also like to think about if we want to create a full life in front of us, then bringing in all the power you can and all the awareness you can, you're going to have a much more fulfilled and fulfilling journey.
Absolutely. It's not only more fulfilling, it is also supporting the greater good.
Right. More beneficial to everything around. Yep.
Yeah. So what I didn't share about the dragons is they are literally deeply connected with Mother Earth. You know, you can say they are to a large degree literally coming from the earth and partly coming from, like we all are, from a spiritual perspective. The combination of the two makes every being functional, including us. We are a mixture of spiritual beings having a physical human experience, right? But that's true for every being on earth. And that's also true for the dragons. But Mother Earth is playing a tremendous important role in the way dragons are literally coming into existence, in the same way as Mother Earth is needed to allow plants to grow, you know, and as much as we need every atom from Mother Earth. So all those beings that are around, visible or invisible, are literally, you can say, expressions of Mother Earth. So working with them is working with an aspect of Mother Earth. Working with plants is working with an aspect of Mother Earth. Working with animals is working with an aspect of Mother Earth. That is the power of looking at the whole system in a different way, understanding that all the different beings have their own unique function in order to make this total system that we are part of working in a most optimal way for the benefit of all that live on Earth.
And what's so good about it, I think so many of us are really striving to minimize the selfishness, the ego approach, and really finding the communal energy and really finding that switch from duality to unity.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, tapping into the earth. And again, one of my favorite ideas, or it's not my idea, but we're not separate. And when we see that we're not separate and every action we take will impact around us, well, let's do that with awareness and understanding and with the intention for benefit. And boy, we can really accomplish a lot, can't we?
Absolutely.
So I want to hear more about the different kinds of dragons. And then I'll share how the one I met, and actually I met three. But we're going to take a quick break, and then Jaap and I will be back, and he's going to sort of give us the Cliff Note version of the different groupings of dragons. There are many that he has encountered, and he's done a fabulous job in his book, Dragons, the Guardians of Creative Power, of Creativity, excuse me. And so when we come back, let's talk about what the different hierarchies are.
We're on air.
Hi, everyone. We're back. This is Doc Martin. I'm here with Dr. Jaap van Etten, and we're talking about dragons. And we're talking about the beings that are literally forces of the earth that have possibilities for really helping us increase our powers of creativity and bringing forth a more meaningful, a more powerful journey as we walk this human life. So, Jaap, I want to just take a minute and just share with everybody my experience with the dragons. And I have to tell you, they were not in my awareness at all. But here we were sitting on the beautiful red rocks after hiking up there, and you asked us to meditate, and I felt this immense power coming up from the earth. And when I got home, when I called the dragon to help me in a healing session, the amount of power that showed up was little bit unnerving because it was so powerful, but it really helped channel the energy for the healing. And since that time, I have had a dragon stone that I got in Sedona in my mesa, mesa being medicine bundle, and it's been there ever since, and it's helped me ever since. So tell me about your discoveries of the different hierarchical groups of dragons.
Yeah, initially it was for me like a blur, you know, it was dragon energy. And I go back to what I shared earlier, that what guides me always in understanding different species is the morphogenetic grids. You know, and going to places like that and meditating on the vortexes of such grids is unbelievable, supportive for the connections you made and for the deeper understanding of them. Now, not everyone is able to do that, so that's the reason why I decided ultimately to write a book about them, so that people could come connect with them. And the book has a lot of pictures of those vortexes, because a picture helps you to connect with those sites so that you also can go on your journey, right? So over time, you know, and the dragons really were guiding. Once I made a connection, it was not me who said, oh, now I'm going this or now I'm going to do that. No, the dragons were literally telling me, study this first and then share it. So I made quite some workshops that was based on the knowledge I had at that time to share that with people. And that's how we gradually build it up. So it's not that I suddenly knew that there were all kinds of species. I thought initially there were only 4 species, yeah,
Mhm.
connected to the 4 elemental powers that I just mentioned. Well, over time, I learned that there are different aspects of each of the elemental powers, and different dragons are helping with the different aspects of those elemental powers. So slowly, a whole pattern begins to emerge. A pattern that showed that the different dragons were working with different aspects to help you as a human being to fine tune your ability to create. And it's not something that immediately is a snap with the fingers and you know how to create because you connect with the dragon. No, the dragons are guiding and supporting you as long as you come from your heart, yeah, in your creation, to fine tune and to learn what is important for you. We are all unique people, and that means that we are not here for the same reason to do the same thing. We all have our unique gifts and create different aspects. So we need also slightly different dragons. But in order to know which ones, the book was written to help people to understand that. So over time, more and more species were literally added. Sometimes during a workshop, suddenly I was like, what is that? And not only that I saw it, but also the participants in the workshops said, did you see that? Did you feel that? And slowly we helped each other to understand better and better. Now, continuing with the grids, the pattern began to emerge. So first they guided me to go into what I call the duality dragons, which are the dragons that help us to work with our creation within a world that is based on opposing forces, you can say, about differences. We call it then duality or polarity. Yeah? That was the first group that they guided me to study. And later I heard that there were others that were working, that we call the primordial dragons, that were working with the basically with the elements itself instead of the elemental powers. And I was wondering, why are we not working with them first? And their answer was, you need to learn to understand some principles. And that's why we guide you through different steps to bring in more and more of the different energies so that people can, in the responsible way, working with the tremendous powers of the elements. We have forgotten how unbelievable powerful they are. But we are seeing the effects of it regularly in storms that are destructive, in rain that can come pour down, showing that the elementals are a little bit out of whack at the moment. And we have contributed to that by polluting air, water, and earth. So it's not so surprising that we see the effects of that. So the dragons said, if you start working with these tremendous powers, you're not ready for it. So work first with the duality, go to the oneness, and then you work with the powers of the elements. So I was guided through all those different groups in a, you can call it a year plan of the dragons. The dragons didn't do that in one year, no. Over years, I got bits and pieces. So every year I had a workshop, and I did most of the workshops, I did partly here, but also in the Netherlands, because a lot of people were very excited about it. And since I go every year back to my home country, that is where we did those workshops. But and tested them out, and I'm grateful because it is through testing out and the guts to work together with it that we learn to understand them better. We need each other to understand different principles. I cannot come up with everything alone. My brain is not able to do it. But through different interactions, we fine tune information, and that's how things are growing and expanding and growing. And as I said, the grids are so unbelievable helpful to understand that. Now, I met several of the dragons in the sense of when I was meditating, dragons flow by. And often I didn't know what species they were. And I call them species because we found out that the different guardians were like dragon species, and there were 45 species of dragons. And what I learned is that I was not able to really understand them until I went one day into a cave. And I was so attracted to that cave in the red rocks, pretty remote. And when I entered that cave, I knew immediately, wow, this is dragon energy. So I thought it was a dragon vortex, right? No, there was a dragon. It was a primordial earth dragon. Well, I'm a Taurus, so I'm quite an earthy person. So, of course, I need to meet first an earth dragon. It was a very impressive meeting. And still, if I look back, it was both emotional for me. It was empowering. It was unsettling. It had almost everything because it was so, the same as you described, so overwhelming to actually be in the presence of such a huge ancient being. And it took me quite a while to give that a place in my life. And once I gave it a place, I could go there more often. And once in a while, I need to go there. I hear her, I say her because it's earth, it's feminine, right? I hear her calling, and then I know I have to go. So I hike out there and sit and meditate in the cave for as long as feels right to do so. And I learned so much from her. We are just, as a human species, at the very beginning of understanding this world. And we need those wonderful beings to help us to understand more of it.
I think that's wonderful. And I know, even though I was so thrilled that I actually felt one, I hadn't, that was 5 years ago. I hadn't read your book. So I had no idea that was the tip of the dragon iceberg. And I haven't sat down with a disciplined approach to meet more or fine tune it. All I know is that it came from the earth and it was primordial and very, very powerful. And it could be intimidating, but I found that it was more that it was intimidating by the magnitude of its power, not because it was being malicious, and how helpful. Um, so the next thing we're going to do for everybody, so if you want to be ready to relax back, and when we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Jaap is going to lead us on a meditation to connect with the dragons. And he has many meditations in his books, and that is the dragons, the guardians of creative powers, becoming a conscious creator. And I got my copy on Amazon, but he'll take us on a meditation, and hopefully you'll get to tune in with them. And then if you want to get his book, and he has many meditations in his book, that'll be wonderful. So we'll take a short break and then we'll come back. in our last segment, which makes me a little sad because I've really loved being here with Dr. Jaap van Etten, and he's going to take us on a short meditation. So please don't do this if you're driving. Turn it off, and you can listen again on the podcast that's on the Transformation Talk radio site. And Jaap, if you'll take us away.
Okay. So I hope those who are listening are making themselves comfortable, because we will be on about a 10-minute journey to connect deeper with those beings that we really actually need in our daily life. So let's start with a few deeper inhalations and exhalations. You have been listening to the talks, which basically brings us in our mind, where we need to relax deeper and deeper to move in our hearts. The heart is such an important organ. It's the first organ that developed, and it's the one that is supposed to guide us in our lives, not our brain, not our mind, our hearts. And in that heart is, according to many traditions, and you may be able to feel it, in our hearts is residing our essence. You can call it the spiritual essence. Some people call it the soul. Some people call it the high self. But it is the essence of who we really are, the spiritual essence. And the only organ through which we can connect with that is the heart. And it speaks through us, through the heart to us. So it's important that you feel your heart as to the level that you can in this moment. Being aware that it's important that whatever you do, start first with your heart. There is where your answers are for almost every aspect in your life. And that essence that I'm talking about, you can see or imagine as white light that is mostly, you can say, pulled back into your heart. But we can allow it to radiate out. We can shine our lights out from our hearts through our whole system. It's actually the steps of enlightenment. Enlightenment is allowing your light to shine, not being afraid to allow it to shine. And that light is very, very important because it helps to make all our chakras the colors of the rainbow, because we are rainbow beings. We are supposed to be. And every energy is a carrier of information. And the information that the light is carrying is the information of how to be in this place of unconditional love. So feel, to the best of your ability, unconditional love for yourself first and foremost, exactly as you are right now. No need to change first before loving yourself. And being in this place of love and light that we are now, we can connect with anything that we choose to connect with. But the first step always is connecting with Mother Earth. She truly is our mother because she provides us with everything that we need. She feeds us on every level, physical and spiritual. And when you send love to her, she always will send love back. And we are all connected through her. Every human being, every plant and animal, every visible and invisible being, including the dragons. Through her, we can connect with them. But before we connect with them, I invite you to send your love to all the other people that are listening, that are participating, because love and light doesn't know any barriers in time and space. And feel that you are connected with every listener now and the one that will listen in the future, co-creating a field that supports you, support you to be you, but also support you to connect with the dragons, as we are going to do that now. But for the moment, feel that connection of love and light that you have with everyone that's participating now and in the future. And be aware that your intent, the intent from your heart, is the key to any connection you want to make. So first, we set the intent that we now connect with the whole field of dragons. You can call it a collective field of all dragons, all species, all individuals. And trust that by setting this intent and with the support of all that participate, you are now connected. You're connected to this field of dragons. And you can connect any time that you choose with it. And you can ask those dragons that you need in a particular situation to support you, simply by connecting with this field. And within this field, you can connect with different groups. And I'm going to invite them so that you, whether you know it or not, make a connection so that when you invite the dragons, those that you have already connected with can more easily step forward. And the first group we want to connect with are the primordial dragons. The dragons that help you to learn to work and respect the powers of the elements so that we find balance in this world. The second group we invite is the group of the duality dragons that help you to create, even although you still think in terms of differences, polarity, duality. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we do that, we need to create it in the most optimal way, and they will help us. We now connect with the oneness dragons, those that help us to go to a higher level of vibration so that we begin to create for the greater good of all that exists. And now we connect with the master dragons, the one that helps us to master the different aspects of the powers of the elements and the elemental powers in such a way that we can go to higher and higher frequencies of creation, supporting even more the greater good. And finally, we connect with the cosmic dragons. The dragons that make sure that whatever work is done with dragons on Earth is in alignment with cosmic principles. You have connected yourself with those 5 groups. Be aware that once you are connected, you will always be connected. And you can use this connection to invite them in each moment that you need some support. Let's sit just for a little while longer in this energy so that it gets deeply and more deeper integrated in your system. Trust that your connections do exist. Trust that you can work with them and that they can enrich your life. Take again a deep breath. Bring your awareness back to the place that you're sitting and open your eyes again.
Thank you, Jaap. So everyone, I'm not going to disturb your mellow moment. I'm going to let you continue to integrate. Remember that this meditation will be on the Transformation Talk Radio as archived and on my website, SharonMartinMD.com. And you can find Jaap at lemerantis.com. So we're going to leave you now, and I thank you so much for being with us, and thank you to Jaap for introducing us to these beautiful, powerful beings. And good night, everyone. Thank you. You've been listening to Maximum Medicine Radio with Doc Martin. Tune in next time while the Doc talks health, spirituality, and the impact your beliefs have on every part of who you are, body and soul. Doc Martin unpacks the challenges we face as human beings and teaches callers to open the door between the scientific and the mystical. Expand into your multidimensional self. Learn how beliefs can set you free or keep you caged in mediocre health. To learn more about Doc Martin and Maximum Medicine, visit www.SharonMartinMD.com.